Hi, I'm Tori Purcell, as always, guys, and I'm here with Bob Weick to talk about Marx and Soho, the play he stars in. So how are you?
I'm fine. Tori, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good.
I'm happy to be here to help support this effort to get some funding for the Communications Center. It's a great idea. Great work is done here. I think it's ironic that in this wealthy country we have to go to such lengths to get solid funding for worthwhile projects, but that's the state of the affairs for now.
Right.
So I'm happy to be here and talk to you.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I have two careers. I shoe horses, so I do some blacksmithing. I've been doing that most of my life. Started acting later in life, and around 2000 I started to work in Norristown with the Iron Age Theater company with John Doyle. And that was sort of a new beginning for my artistic career, and I'm a company member with the theater company. And yeah, so that's how I spend most of my time, between horses and the stage. Yeah.
That sounds pretty interesting. That must be a pretty interesting life.
I never have trouble starting a conversation at a cocktail party. You know, those are unique professions, and yeah, I've been lucky that way.
So can you tell us a bit about Marx and Soho, what it's about?
Oh, yes. Well, Marx and Soho, for those of you who aren't familiar with the play, was written by historian and activist Howard Zinn. And the basic premise of the play is that Karl Marx, right, this seldom understood figure in the past who's associated often with totalitarianism and all sorts of terrible things. The premise of the play is that Karl Marx comes back to present-day America to clear his name and to advocate for peace and justice. So it's a fanciful story to open, right, that Karl Marx would come back to from a place he didn't believe existed, but to clear his name, and because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot about his work and his life that is not known. And so the play serves as an introduction to who he is. It serves as an introduction to his thinking and his life's work of pointing out the problems of capitalism, pointing out the inequality that is often part of this economic system, of inequality that we are so aware of right now, right? That the rich are richer and the poor are poorer, and how did that happen and why does that happen? Well, Marx offers an explanation to all that. So in part it's an economic, academic lesson, but only in part.
Right.
There's a lot of humor in the play, there's a lot of passion in the play, and talks a lot about his family life as well. So you get a great introduction into the man and his thinking. Yeah.
Awesome, that's great.
Yeah. And it's a call to action. I should add that.
Call to action. Yeah.
To get involved, yeah. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you said Howard Zinn is the writer of this. So can you tell us more about him?
Well, Howard Zinn, born in 1922, and he served in World War II.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, in that so-called Great War, it influenced his development and his thinking. And fortunately for him, when he came out of the war, he was served as a bombardier. He was able to go to college for free on a very socialistic program known as a GI Bill, right?
Okay.
And from there, he got his PhD. And his first assignment, his first teaching position, was at an all-black college in the South, an all-black women's college, Spelman's College. And Howard, being a student of history, and especially reading black historians, was very supportive of the young women at Spelman College in their early, this was in the early stages of the civil rights movement. And he was so supportive of them, those students, that eventually the administration there fired him and got rid of him. Right? And he ended up at Boston College. But those were formative years for him, and he continued to develop his view of history. And perhaps his most famous work, Marx and Soho is well known, but his most famous work is a history called A People's History of the United States, where he tells a history of our country from the point of view of the slave, from the point of view of the immigrant, from the point of view of the Native American. And I guess the overall message in Howard's work in that book is that all the improvements, all the advances we make as a society come about when people gather together, feel their political power, take to the streets and demand it. And it's a powerful proposition he puts forth. And I think an honest view of history supports that point of view. It's not that some great president decrees something and makes America great again, right? That's not how it works. It happens from grassroots power of people. And you look at our history from the abolitionists to the women's rights movement, to the labor movement, to the civil rights movements, to the gay movement. It's people demanding change in society that is really the focal point of it. So part of the message of the play, part of the message of an important message in Howard's work is that when we gather together and organize ourselves and demand a better world, then the politicians listen. Then they follow us.
Right.
And it's, you know, and sort of recent events show that. It wasn't long ago that our conservative Supreme Court okayed gay marriage. And why did they do that? Because the people had evolved on that topic.
Right.
Right? So it's important to learn that really we are the government. We have the power to create the society that we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Howard's message. And it was great over the years to get to know him and to call him friend. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So back to your kind of role in Marx and Soho, what is your overall responsibility?
Well, to tell Howard's story to the best of my ability, and he did like this production, and he supported it. He really commissioned John Doyle and myself and Iron Age Theater to present the play as often as we could. He saw that the play, like many art forms, speaks to a different part of our humanity and connects with people in a way that a lecture or reading one of Marx's original works might not. Art has this power of communication, this ability to reach hearts and minds in the way that other forms of information don't. So I take that commission seriously and try to honor the ideas contained in the play. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So because you do play Karl Marx, how do you feel that your life relates to his?
Well, I can relate to being a father and a husband. I can relate to wanting to see change in the world and being frustrated that it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
I can't relate to him in terms of his breadth of knowledge or the extent to which he's dedicated his entire life to understanding the intricacies and the contradictions that we see in capitalism. I don't have his breadth of knowledge.
Right.
I do feel on the stage and in aspects of my life that I bring a certain passion and conviction to those ideas. And sometimes my beard is as big as his. But yeah, you know, it's, I'm not sure that there's much more than that I can say we share. Some German heritage.
Oh, there you go. That counts, right?
Yeah.
So how do you find you keep yourself separate from his ideology compared to your own?
Well, that presupposes that my ideology is different than his.
Yeah. So if it doesn't, then absolutely talk about that.
Well, I think my own thinking on his life and work has evolved from the early stages where I didn't really understand what all the concepts that are brought to the fore in the play. And there's always on the left of the political spectrum this debate between reformism or revolution. How do we know that society isn't working well. Everyone knows that there's something terribly wrong. We all know we need to change and improve things. We know going to the right or conservatism isn't going to work. We just have a long history that trying to go backwards isn't the way. So there are various ideological viewpoints about how to move forward in left thinking, and mine have evolved. And I think at this point, I don't know that I differ very much from Marx in the sense of understanding that capitalism is a root problem, that needs to be either heavily controlled and reformed or done away with completely, because what we've been doing doesn't work. You look at the state of the world, capitalism rules the world. Capitalism rules China, although they call themselves a communist country.
Right.
They're not really, right? They're a state-controlled capitalist country. So we see the state of the world, we see all the horror, we see the suffering. We know that the world is full of abundant wealth. There's more than enough money in this community in this country to properly fund the communication center. There's no lack of resources. There's no lack of food. But we see, because capitalism is a competitive-based economic model, because capitalism requires winners and losers. Somebody has to lose in this economic model. And it's just a nonsensical way to go about things. There's a better way to do it. So to that extent, I'm in lockstep with Karl Marx. I'm sure there might be other areas of his thinking that I would differ from. Having the benefit of 200 years of hindsight now, right?
Right.
You know, Marx thought that capitalism would self-destruct on its own, and there's no reason to believe that's going to happen. Although we see those winds of change throughout society now, from Occupy Wall Street to the rise of Bernie Sanders, who would have easily defeated Trump if he'd gotten the nomination. So there are certainly differences, and there's places I'm with him 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare for putting on his kind of persona for your play?
You know, it's not hard to tap into the kind of passion that he must have felt, because being a father and a husband, I can relate to what he experienced as a man who struggled to provide for his family, as a man who saw his children die, as a man who had a often contentious but loving relationship with his wife.
Right.
You know, so there are these very human elements that I can tap into, that I can draw from my own personal life, that I can bring to the stage. And the play is just so well written that and well directed by John Doyle and the company who helped me in rehearsal to bring that to life and to connect with it.
Right.
And to, you know, it's not, I've done the play a lot of times, I've done it hundreds of times, and the play still feels fresh because the current news cycle is also part of the play. What's happening in the world is part of the play. There's these small sections where I talk about current events, you know, about what's happening here and now in this community. So the play always feels fresh, and because it's just me, it's a one-man show, right? So it's me and the audience. And the audience is my scene partner. You know, I talk to people face to face during the course of the play. Keep lights up, I look at people. You know, I try to engage them. So having a different scene partner keeps it different.
Right.
So it always feels fresh and alive, and it's still relevant. The ideas in the play are still necessary and needed. And hopefully someday what this play talks about will be common knowledge, and we'll have moved past this sort of terrible phase of history that we're in. And it won't be so necessary or relevant. But right now it's a hot topic.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you said you've done hundreds of shows. Do you know? Off the top of your head, how many would you say you've done?
Oh, well, the official figure is 294.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got it pretty well memorized. Want me to do it? I could do it right now. Just stand there and do it. But,
and what cities have you gone to, and have you performed in?
Well, I've been in 27 states. I've been in a lot of cities, right? And a lot of small communities all over the country. There are some states I haven't managed to get a production in yet. There are certain very conservative red states that don't seem to have it in their sights or aren't willing to bring it. It's been difficult to get him in the door. A lot of people are afraid of Karl Marx.
Right.
You know, they associate him with this, you know, with Stalinism and these terrible totalitarian things that happened. And that's what the play tries to do, separates him from that. Marx condemns what happened in those countries where so-called communist leaders were installed, who actually betrayed the ideas and the thinking of Karl Marx. So I've been in a lot of places, but there's 23 or 4 states that haven't welcomed me yet.
Well, hopefully you get to them.
Yeah.
Is there a specific place that kind of sticks out in your mind, a certain performance that you can remember?
Well, there was the first time I performed it live in front of Howard Zinn, the author of the play.
Right.
This was up in Boston, a packed house, sold out, of course. I think people were more excited to see him than the play. But that was the first time we got to hang out together. I had just done the show at the Philadelphia Fringe Festival, so it was still a young production in the early stages of my touring the play. And it was exciting to be there before him and then share the stage with him afterwards. So that was fun. I've done it for crowds, some huge audiences. At one time at the University of Oregon, we had over 800 people,
Wow.
right? And they were trying to accommodate people and, you know, get them in the building, and so we were starting late. They were trying to fit this massive crowd into this ballroom, and the people were chanting Marx, you know. I was so excited to, you know, waiting for the show to start and coming out and getting a standing ovation, right, just before I even say anything. So I'm playing to the choir there. I'm playing to a very woke audience.
Right.
And so that's fun, because those situations you feel like a rock star and it's a big party. I will say, though, that going to some of these very conservative places where these ideas and the power of these ideas is brand new or unknown, and I'm often met with shocked silence and confusion, because they've never heard the history of the country or the history of Marx explained this way, is also. Now, I don't get the standing ovation and the roaring applause at the end of that, but what I get is young minds questioning what they were, in a lot of ways, indoctrinated to believe. So from those huge, roaring, happy crowds to the intimate classroom performances at conservative bastions, I find it all rewarding.
And how do you find yourself connecting to those large audiences in something as intimate as Karl Marx's life?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good question, because you know, in theater we talk about scale sometimes. So if I was working in a small space like this with 20, 30 people, the play often takes a different energy and tone to it, because it is more intimate. It's more, I don't have to raise my voice, I don't have to project or be as big on stage, I don't have to command as much. And so I think I just respond to this place I'm in. If I'm in a giant auditorium, I naturally just stand up bigger and broader to address everyone. It's a different thing. Whereas in a small intimate space, I can come right down to an audience member and say, well, what do you think about that? You know?
Right.
And then hope you don't say anything, because you know, that throw me off. But so yeah, it changes with the venue. And yeah, so and that's the other thing I was saying earlier about the performance is live and fresh, and it depends where I am, what's going on in society at that time, who my audience is. It's a living, breathing, changeable piece of theater.
And throughout the years, how do you feel the play has changed?
The play hasn't changed. My understanding of it has. My comfort with stepping out on stage alone. Often to a hostile crowd. You know, I mean, this is the one role I've done where I can walk out and feel hostility coming from me. People, you know, because often it's, I perform mostly at colleges. And so sometimes students who have this distorted view or no view of Karl Marx will be like, Karl Marx, you know, isn't he a crazy Russian who wanted to kill everyone and take over the world, right? They have this distorted view. And I can walk in and they're like, I can't believe my stupid professor is making me come to see this stupid show about this bad guy. But through the course of the play, something happens, something changes, they begin to connect with it. But I think I fell off track of your question.
That was good, that was perfect.
Okay.
So what's the experience that you hope that the audience gets from your performance?
Well, I think the overall call to the play, or maybe the takeaway from it, is something we alluded to earlier. It's about feeling your political power. It's recognizing that you have a role to play in society. That, you know, we are often encouraged in this country to simply be consumers of products. In fact, they call us that. We're referred to as consumers. That we're here to keep the machines of the economy going, right? Do the work, be obedient, go shopping. George Bush said after 9/11, what did he say? Go shopping, right? The play is a call to be a citizen, to be active, to realize that you have a role to play. It's wonderful that we have these certain rights in this country, and we often neglect that we have responsibilities. And so the play wants to remind you of that, wants you to feel your power, wants to encourage you to go out and do something. And you know, not everyone can do heroic things. Not everyone can be Rosa Parks or, you know, or Howard Zinn, you know, or any number of great leaders and thinkers in our society. But everyone can do something. Everyone can join an organization or start their own organization. Anyone can participate in an idea that they care about and contribute to it. And that's what it is. It's a million people doing a million little things. And I'm quoting Howard Zinn here. A million people doing million things, and that's how change happens. Right? I mean, there was a time at the start of the Iraq War, everyone thought it was a good idea, but then they realized it was a mistake. And so people can change. That change is possible, that things can get better, and that we can participate in that is the message.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So will the play be going on tour this summer?
Not this summer. I'm booked with a couple other shows. I've got an Irish play coming up.
Wow.
Opens next week. And I'm doing some Shakespeare this summer. But then in August, I'm heading over to Germany.
Wow.
I'm going to start out in Marx's birthplace and sort of follow his footsteps from where he was born in Trier in Germany down to Paris when he was exiled. And then when he was thrown out of Paris, he went to Belgium. And they threw him out of Belgium too until he ended up in England, where he spent most of his life and did most of his work. So I'm going to reconnect with, follow in his footsteps, see the things he saw, try to deepen my appreciation and understanding of him, and lay the groundwork for 2018, which will be a year full of performances, I hope, yeah.
Awesome. And where can people find out more information if they want to go see it?
IronAgeTheater.org, a Norristown-based company, and we also produce in Philadelphia. Yeah, or you can email me at marxandsoho@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So how do you feel how do you feel this play has impacted your daily life?
Well, it's formed for me. I'm part of a community now of all sorts of artists who are using their talent to have an effect on society. There's wonderful artists and companies in town that are working for social change. And I mentioned Iron Age Theater. There's another thing we do. We have this division called Radical Acts, all right, which is somewhat based on Howard Zinn's Voices of a People's History, which is a whole other topic. But it's the idea of bringing these voices from the past, often little-known voices, into academic institutions, into the community, so people can connect with their history. We can hear the great words of Eugene Debs, or Helen Keller, or Rosa Parks, or any number of thinkers, and how they, and the role that they played in helping to bring about social change. So there's all sorts of wonderful work going on in town. So I'm part of a larger community, and it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see the development following this recent election, right? The unthinkable happened, and people are responding, and the organizing and the protesting, and recently we had a very progressive, left-leaning district attorney win the election in Philadelphia. So there's lots of current events and things that are going on that are encouraging that I feel a part of, and that's great.
And do you feel like right now this moment is a moment of change for how the citizens of America are feeling about their president?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of blowback since his election. I think people. It feels like it's one of those teachable moments. It's one of those moments in history where people are really paying attention in a way they often haven't in the past. I think people are aware that the Democratic Party also has problems and is complicit in this turn of events because they really hadn't fulfilled their responsibility to working people. And I think people are really tuning in. I mean, I see it all the time. It's all over Facebook and it's in the news, people trying to do things. It's a very interesting time. And well, in my life, and I've been around a while now, but this feels like one of the more revolutionary moments, a very exciting time to see which way we're going to go. And we're going to go in one of two directions, it seems. So either we're going to go to this sort of right-wing, authoritarian, ultra-conservative, some say fascist direction, with all its hate and division, or we're going to go left towards a more socialist, people-oriented society. Because what we realize now, and what a lot of people are understanding now, is that this middle-of-the-road thing we've been doing, trying to be sort of like pro-worker, pro-family thing, but really mostly taking care of Wall Street, trying to find that balance just doesn't work, and it didn't work, and it made Trump possible. So the choice is going to be going to these other ends, and it'll be interesting to see. It feels like a time where we may finally make this shift from this very unequal, oppressive, unhappy society. This country scores terribly low on the happiness indexes. People are just under a great deal of stress, and it doesn't have to be this way. So we know going to the right won't help, right? So hopefully, and what I'm seeing, it looks like there's a real shift to the left. Socialist organizations have tripled their membership since the election. So there's exciting changes going on.
Right. So as you said before, you're kind of shaping these young minds towards, these changes and, taking action. Is there any advice that you have for kids who want to get involved or even go into theater and act and maybe make a change in ways that they feel that they're capable?
I almost feel like answering this in sort of the way we spoke a little earlier, in that, yes, find that thing that you care about. And if you have an artistic edge, or an interest in that, yes, there's a place where you can bring that talent to the stage. You can develop and learn those skills. If you're into video and television and film, there's a way to tell these stories and your own personal story and to be involved. If you like to write, there's journalism. There's room for every skill and every aptitude available to work for social change, to work for peace and justice and equality. There's room for everyone on the left.
Absolutely,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So what are your future plans for Marx and Soho, and how long do you see yourself doing this for?
Well, I plan to do it until someone says, you just can't do that. But in the immediate future, I've got a plan. I'm going to Germany, as I mentioned.
Right, yes,
and part of the reason I'm doing this trip is that 2018 marks the 200th anniversary of Marx's birth.
Okay.
And so it's a milestone of sorts, and I'm hoping that with the current state of society, with inequality being such an important topic, with Marx being, read and considered, with the growth of socialist organizations, that it feels like a prime time to celebrate this birth of this man who really showed us, who did the work to show us the problems with capitalism.
Absolutely.
To celebrate that life and celebrate that birth. And so in 2018, I'm hoping to do a lot of productions at universities and high schools and theater companies around the country, and also do some European productions, perhaps, in the very cities that he lived and traveled to. So I'm trying to lay the groundwork for that. So it should be exciting if I can pull it off. Yeah.
So my one last question here that I have for you is, what is the importance of political action?
People often shy away from politics, right?
Yeah.
They feel like they can separate themselves from the political environment. And they're often very discouraged by the political environment.
Right.
And I understand that people would often want to escape into the world of sports, say, or television shows, and just escape the ugliness that is often that is today very much a part of our political landscape.
Right.
But political power affects the quality of your life. The quality of those you love, their lives are very much affected by political decisions. You have a responsibility to yourself and to your loved ones to engage with these important ideas. And in the end, for me, I have a particular point of view which I'm not shy about sharing.
Right.
And I feel that the way to improve people's lives is to look in this other direction, to look left. But wherever someone comes down in their own personal ideology or however their thinking evolves, you've got to stay involved and be part of the debate, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to those you care about.
Absolutely.
So yes, I would encourage everyone to do that. There's room for it, and as I was saying earlier, you don't have to be as heroic as Karl Marx or Fred Hampton,
right.
Or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. You don't have to be as heroic as those people, but you can do something, and you have a responsibility to do it. So stand up and do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Today.
This was delightful. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you. I'm Tori Purcell. I was here with Bob Weick to talk about Marx and Soho. I believe that you can find more information for it at ironagetheater.com and the Radical Acts page. So check that out and you can find more information about the play. And now let's go check over to Sam.